the day. What an amazing day. Thank you guys so much for staying. I love how it's still such a full house as well. I want to welcome Jakob Halva from Tom & Co. We have Sophie Seaton from Underwater Pistol, Dom Sevlon from Applied Digital, E2X, and Nilay Oza, who you know already, co-founder, CEO of Klaviyo. Sorry, I'm tired now. But this panel is all about Chat GPT, OpenAI, conversations, basically what we've been talking about all day. But these guys have a lot of opinions, and we were joking earlier that we've tried to prep for this panel about 3 times. And every single time we prep for this panel, something new happens, and then everything's changed. So interestingly, the last time we prepped for this panel, we even asked if Chat GPT could be a panelist, which was quite funny. So Jakob gave it a try, and we realized it was actually a little bit too dumb and didn't meet the speaker criteria for this event. But yeah, so kind of introduce yourself, and maybe can you just tell me as well something that you used Chat GPT for, just kind of quick fire recently. Jakob.
So I'm Jakub, I'm head of operations at Tom & Co. I've been Magento agency developing websites for about 10 years now. ChatGPT completely changed our world as an agency, but I wanted to share one thing when I'm using it in my personal life. I don't know what this says about me as a person, but I started using it to writing personalized birthday wishes to my friends and family, and also to finding the perfect gifts for them, because it's so good at having that conversation with me and understanding the person I'm actually buying this for.
I'm stealing that. Absolutely. Sophie.
Hi, I'm Sophie, Commercial Director at Underwater Pistol. So we're a Shopify Plus agency. We've got a team full of creative and technical specialists, and I suppose my role in our agency and kind of in this discussion is to bridge the gap. So we get lots of people very excited about emerging technology, and I suppose my role is to bridge the gap between what does the technology look like and what does that result in terms of commercial goals and commerciality of the tech. In terms of things that I've personally used ChatGPT for my toddler's meal planning, to be completely honest. Any busy working mums out there will find that genius. But we were also discussing embarrassing use cases. So I was going to shout out someone in the audience if he's here. A tech partner of ours, we were having a chat recently, and the conversation went a little bit about how dirty could you get ChatGPT to talk. So if you want to see how that went, ask Neil from Gorgeous at the end.
Okay. Maybe one for the pub later.
Wow, okay. Don't know how to follow that. I'm Dom Sullivan CTO at E2X and Applied Digital. We've been using Chat GPT and various other flavors of AI at Applied Digital in our lab for various different use cases. But personally, I've been using it for creating poems, silly poems about our company. I've used it for color matching in recent decorating attempts, various different reasons. I use it day to day in my content creation, inspiration. It's actually a very, very big part of my day-to-day life now.
Talk.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I was just nervously checking yesterday that, will OpenAI service come up or not until 1 a.m. yesterday night. Very excited about what's happening. We have also started exploring other models, like Neeraj mentioned, outside ChatGPT itself. So to understand, where all this heading towards.
I think we have a mic issue. If someone could get Nilay a new mic, that would be great. I'm not sure. I was wondering, how many e-commerce businesses in the audience are actually utilizing this technology in their day-to-day? And does anybody want to, yes, would you like to give an example?
Hello.
Hello.
I just have it at the side of me all day, and anything that comes in an email, I'm putting in there. I got it to write an NDA like that and just sent it straight to the customer. I did read it first. I use it to take product descriptions and say, write this in Ada and put bullet points in, and it goes wow with call to actions, and I'm like, great. Took a customer's case study, just put all the facts in and just says, write me a case study that looks half decent, and I need it with these 5 headings because it matches my website, and it did, and it was, it took like a minute to do and then just a couple of minutes to review. It's just like my productivity is 2-3 times what it used to be.
Amazing. Anybody else have anything to share?
Oh, one more thing.
Yes.
The wife sent me a message and I didn't know how to answer it, but I'd seen the Beavis and Butthead replying to girlfriends' text messages, so I copy-pasted it and said reply to that. I couldn't believe it. She's not really used Chat GPT. Her response was, ha ha, Chat GPT. Oh, somebody else?
Did anybody else want to share any ways that they're using it right now? E-com businesses? Okay. So I think there's quite low adoption, it seems, like from at least this kind of very small sample of the e-commerce landscape. How has the technology impacted your clients? I'll start with you, Sophie, and then maybe go to you, Jakob.
Yeah, so I think first of all, our day-to-day as an agency, so we're using it first of all to create efficiencies in lots of ways. You just mentioned productivity. Across the team, we've actually been interacting with AI tools for a long time. Our team are a really inquisitive bunch, lots of musicians, so we've been using it personally for a long time, and professionally, I guess some use cases are developers using Copilot to test and validate, not to build all of our websites, don't worry. And then from a content production point of view, using Jasper to plan content. And I suppose one of the really important things there, again, not writing all of our content with AI, but the important thing there is what it gives us back is time. And when you can reinvest that time from a content marketing point of view back into ideation, back into research and actually original research, back into distribution and editing, rather than spending all of your time on composition when you've got 4 blog posts, a newsletter, social posts, and so on. Actually, what you're gaining back is creativity, where I think there's potentially a bit of a misconception that we might be killing creativity by using AI for everything. In terms of our clients, I think there's some very interesting use cases around the corner. I think our clients have been using AI, some probably without even realizing, for a long time. But in terms of generative AI and Chat GPT, I think there's low adoption in this room, and we see the same with our clients at the moment. But I think that will change in the next 3, 6, 12 months, definitely.
And Jakob?
It's been very similar as when it comes to agency, for example. Our developers were initially very resistant. They didn't want to use it. They were like, it doesn't write as good a code as I can. But I think, so we had to make it mandatory. We basically made it mandatory in the agency. If you're a technical person at Tom & Co, you have to use ChatGPT. And in a month or 2, it completely changed. And now we have a Slack channel where everybody's discussing what are the best prompts and how to optimize it. And it just gave us back so much time. And also, we're finally, I don't know if I should be saying this, but we're doing things properly in terms of, for example, code documentation, because that's the one thing in an agency you never have time to do. Whereas ChatGPT, just give it the page of code, it writes the documentation for you. So that's how we persuaded developers to do that. And our clients, so we, about 3 months ago, we looked at it and we were like, this is going to change the world. How can it help our clients? And we looked at slightly different use case than Claywu, which was, for us, merchant-focused. So how can we make merchants more efficient? And we look specifically at the quality of generative AI to produce text and produce text in the right tone of voice. So our big win was, if we describe to ChatGPT what is the tone of voice of our client, and then give it, for example, some product data and ask it to write descriptions, it writes them very, very well in terms of branding and everything. And then we thought, what is one of the biggest challenges? And we had some talks today about new market expansion for clients. And for example, as was said, when you're expanding to a new territory, language localization would be a good use case. And traditionally, that's very challenging. You have to hire expensive agencies, or you have to use in-house resource. With ChatGPT and GPT-4, we are very, very close to a stage where basically you can get your Magento or Shopify web store translated in your tone of voice almost immediately. So we've developed a product and a proof of concept, which does exactly that. That was also very interesting, because while doing that, we've encountered some of the issues I think we'll be talking about soon, hallucination, etc. But it's also great to see that the challenges we've encountered 2 months ago, as we were saying, things are changing so quickly, GPT-4 released sorted most of them out. So we now believe we have a product which actually works, and the future is looking even better.
Yeah, it's really interesting how much more productive we can be. but kind of there's an ethics side to it as well, isn't there? And so kind of I'm going to go over to you now, Nilay. Like, how open is OpenAI? And all of these people building these products, like brilliant people, are they wasting their time? Like, what is the future? What does the future look like when OpenAI isn't open anymore?
You answered the question.
Okay,
that OpenAI
okay.
is not open. It started with open principles, for sure, but it's now closed. I think that in terms of the future, it's almost at the scale of industrial revolution. It would be as big as how we got electricity or utility first in the place. It would be that paradigm shift we will see in next few months itself. We will start to see that. So there is no question about it. The future is, I'm optimist, so it's good. but I feel I don't want my kids to become adults when they are, basically creating the data for only 2 or 3 companies in the world. And that's where I feel that I encourage, this is not like a clever thing, but I encourage all innovators to actually, build more original innovations and inventions that use Chat GPT or other models, but not fully adopt it to the point that you are kind of almost, surrendering everything to it. And then if at one fine morning, if OpenAI or any other company for that matter decides that they're going to charge tokens, that's the pricing model, they're going to charge tokens in a different way, or their pricing on tokens is changing, that can really screw you up, financially big time. So yeah, my only concern is that I hope that the market doesn't become oligopolistic or monopolistic almost. And I think, but otherwise, yeah, it's a brilliant application for sure. But it gives you knowledge. It doesn't give you understanding. And I think that distinction needs to be clear, because I have come across people who are using GPT applications almost expecting it to have understanding or throw back understanding and not just knowledge. So I think, but overall it's great for, humanity.
Yeah, and Dom, kind of, what is the role of humans now?
Well, we're obsolete, aren't we? I mean, I've not been this excited about a technology since I've got my first computer back in 1984, and playing around with actually holding the mouse the wrong way around and moving around, saying, "Oh, look, it goes down when I push it up." I've not been as excited as what these generative transformers and this NLP, all the AI elements can bring to humanity as a whole. But we have to approach this in terms of construction rather than destruction. We need to have the levels of safeguarding that we have around, I'd argue, nuclear weapons. We have to think in terms of every capability advance. We have to have double the number of safety advances as well. We need to have ethics added to this. We need to think about these in terms of psychology and treating these models, not in terms of computer science, but in terms of what the impact is on the people consuming them. All these sorts of elements, all these sorts of aspects necessarily require a human element to it, and it will for a while until we've fully understood it, and we don't understand it fully yet.
It seems like we won't for quite a while, or maybe ever. I mean, there's been recent news about copyright and the copyright of what the AI produces. Is it owned by the human? Is it the AI? How is that copyrighted? I think it's all very confusing. How can retailers take this very confusing and a little bit scary and also very exciting time and make it work for them commercially? I'll put that out to the panel, whoever wants to come in first.
Well, I'm quite grounded man. So my approach to this would be, you have to adapt or die, as we heard today. So you have to start adopting these technologies, because I completely agree. This is a new industrial revolution. This is not things like metaverse or cryptos where we can have conversations about are they here to stay. This is happening. And so my approach would be each brand needs to probably decide what is it comfortable with. And there are safer ways of applications like the one we've developed, which is focusing on the product data, focusing on translations, which are not directly consumer-facing. So you're reducing the threats to brand equity, because the chances of things going wrong it's a way more controlled environment. Whereas things like chatbots, for example, are a bit more out there, and people can make them say all sorts of things which can damage the brand equity. So I think for me, the retailers need to kind of assess, and this really depends on the brand, because there are some brands for whom being at the cutting edge of technology and offering this amazing chatbot experience, which sometimes maybe goes a bit wrong, might be completely acceptable. And there are some brands in the luxury sector where this is totally unacceptable. So I think each brand needs to kind of do that assessment and decide how to step into the waters of generative AI. But I do strongly feel that each brand needs to start doing that very soon.
I completely agree. I think, first of all, a transformative technology needs a transformed strategy. And I think brands need to start thinking about that now across the board. There are ways of approaching decisions around emerging technology. And I had a really good example from Levi's, who I would recommend as a kind of beacon to look at in terms of adopting this technology. And one way of kind of assessing whether you should invest time, budget, and so on into any emerging tech is to assess it against, first of all, your brand and values. Second of all, your existing business strategy. So this technology should accelerate that strategy, not detract from it, or set you off course. Third of all, and most importantly, a deep financial assessment of where the return on investment is. And then finally, does it actually enhance the customer experience in any way? And if it doesn't, then of course it's a no-go. And I think some of the interesting ways that we'll see the technology commercialized, one is efficiency. Small efficiencies just should be par for the course, but efficiency at scale is revenue. And that's what this technology can do. But then also in terms of cold hard cash that can be attributed to this technology, conversion is the big one. So technology like what Nilay has just demonstrated, we'd expect to see an increase in conversion, increase in revenue from search, and then some other kind of innovative ways that will happen. Again, Levi's is an example. They announced yesterday that they will use generative AI for model diversity. One thing that I do hope it doesn't prevent them from hiring a really diverse set of models that are actual people. And I hope that kind of ethically will be protected. But they did some research that showed that actually conversion was so much higher when you could see models wearing their clothes from a diverse range of backgrounds. So they'll be using generative AI to do that. So another really interesting way that could be commercialized.
Yeah, absolutely. Dom?
I think it's going to help the retailers, absolutely, no doubt about that. But it's also going to help the developers and the integrators as well. Jakob, you touched on it a little bit at the beginning, but what we'll see with one of my favourite subjects, composable and composable software, the number of best-of-breed solutions with the rich APIs that are being provided and the sort of complex and in-depth developer documentation and so on and so forth, you don't necessarily want to, as a developer, consume those reams and reams and reams of documentation. What you want to do is be able to pass it into a language model, create a language model off the back of it, and then interrogate it. With new model things like Alpaca coming in place, where you can actually use that to generate models that are relatively cheap. Now, when Chat GPT first came around, I think it was $4.5 million to generate that model, because it was over 1.5 years with lots of human interface and lots of human interaction with loads of reinforcement and so on and so forth. What we're seeing now is a lot cheaper to actually create a model now, in the range of under $1,000 to actually create a model now, which is game changing. Something we weren't expecting for a good 8 years, I think. We weren't really expecting that level of cost saving. And if we can do that at that model level, we can do that at a small relatively small documentation level and be able to interrogate that from a developer perspective makes that much easier.
Now, you guys have just launched a new product too, haven't you? Do you want to tell us what that is? Is that right? No? Wow.
Shopify?
I do have a new job. That's, I'm not a product.
Apologies, Dom. I misunderstood something you said on a call. So I guess another question for the panel, and then we'll open up to a couple questions from the audience, is what is snake oil? How can retailers avoid it? What might be the red flags right now if somebody's considering what might be right for their brand?
I think one of the things Nilay touched on earlier was bias. The tools are only as good as the data they've been trained on, and they have inherent human bias. And also, they've been given feedback, and that feedback has come from humans, so also inherited bias there. So that's something to be mindful of. I guess the other thing is hallucination. A big limitation of Chat GPT at the moment. We obviously saw massive advancements from 3.5 to 4, and I expect that will just continue. But at the moment, don't expect Chat GPT to be your kind of source of truth. Like I said earlier when I spoke about Copilot, it's validating and testing as opposed to relying on it as a source of information.
Yeah, use it as inspiration.
Exactly.
Not as gospel. Completely agree. I think if you don't understand the legalities and you don't understand quite what's happening with your data, then you shouldn't really use it. I think the data is being used and it's comprising the inspiration for the generative algorithms, whether that's Stable Diffusion, whether that's a GPT transformer. It's going to use your IP and then generate something off the back of it. So as Disney, as Universal, are you willing to have your IP out there for use within these generative algorithms? Possibly, possibly not. You need to be aware of what it means.
Listening to this, actually, I got one very interesting startup idea, actually, literally, just listening to this. I think it would be a great Chrome extension which can actually tell me or watermark on anything that I'm seeing that is this using generative AI or is it real?
This is
That's opening a can of worms.
It is a can of worms. I know from experience with our own marketing team that we've built processes internally to be able to trick the like it says it's 100% human when we run it through things. And we use loads of prompts to get it to sound human and stuff. It's mostly to play around with it. And like you, I've made it.
I'm saying this because recently there are some reports on this image generation actually spreading, it can create community war almost, right? So like Trump being arrested, you have an image there. How do you know whether it's actually truth or generative AI? And that's why I'm saying it's an invention. If that can be done, that no matter what tricks you guys do, and I'm able to find out whether it's really user-generated, or at least there's a proportion of it user-generated, or is it like almost totally, AI generative text or image or voice or video, whatever it is, because that could be, that can actually distinguish between the, it can allow the reader or the one who is consuming that information to make a choice, whether to believe on it and how much to believe in it.
It's almost like #ad, right? In Instagram posts.
So what's interesting, there is a second way how to do that, which is basically the industry agrees on watermarking. So for example, Alpaca comes with a watermarking, and it's very complicated how it's actually done, but it follows certain standards. So it's future-proofing, and it's allowing us to basically apply those technologies.
Yeah. If we develop it, then they will actually watermark it. So it's the other way going.
Because otherwise it goes into this war of like one AI trying to trick the other one that it's not an AI, and like where does this end?
But education will be going, education will be massively important on this as well. You think about the education that had to be used for stopping people clicking on links to circulate viruses. That's, it's still people try. You look at your spam folder, it's going to be full to the brim, regardless of any sort of filters. But people know not to click on nefarious or suspicious links anymore. So a lot of this will be education to say, the human brain, the human pattern recognition is fantastic. It's amazing. It'll start to recognize some of these. Although having looking at Midjourney 5, it does look pretty photorealistic. But I still think there'll be some level of humanity that'll identify these.
You just need to look at their hands. That's what they have problems with.
Exactly. Any questions from the audience for our panel? Yes, you at the front.
Thank you. Hi, it's Patrick from View Storefront. So we are YC-backed company, that's Y Combinator, and obviously Sam comes from there, the founder of OpenAI. And when very early version of chat was coming up, what we were discussing in the smaller circles, what is the society impact? And I think this is something that people don't talk about that much. I think Sam did one of the first interviews approximately a week ago. Imagine the world where most of the junior jobs and mid jobs, the ones that require manual research, gathering information, everything will be gone. It's a matter of time. It's not a matter if, it's when. So I'm wondering, what do you think about that aspect, right? Because it's probably the discussion that is the most impactful, and as much as I love Chat GPT, I'm super scared about that part because our governments are not ready for this. There is no way they're gonna catch up after this. And I know that some and governments globally are discussing heavily about the impact, and this is actually connected with the roadmap of Chat GPT right now.
I think for me, people that kind of rest on their laurels now are the ones that are at risk, or people in those jobs. I think going forward, human AI collaboration is where the focus should be. And the time that can be reinvested by people, like I said earlier, on ideation, on research, on the areas that we shouldn't be using AI for, is how we, maintain originality, creativity, but also how we don't kind of go down that. There will be jobs lost, I completely agree. But those jobs, the people in them, should be switching their focus to elsewhere, as opposed to just losing jobs.
I'm an optimist like Nile. So I do believe in the fundamental goodness of humanity and that we'll come together and things like that. But for this sort of thing, is a universal basic income required? Is the sort of socialism and things like that required to be able to manage this? But we'll also see a differential in the intellectual jobs and the manual jobs and how they will actually pivot as well. So what was relatively low-paid manual labour historically will in the future start to become really high-paid niche work in the future, whereas the likes of engineers, software engineers, something that's formulaic, something that can be generated, it'll become much less expensive in the future. It'll be, unless there's a true creative nature to it.
I would just add that it actually might give a lot of opportunities to develop new products without having an AI background. So a developer, a full stack developer who knows how to use these systems and prompts and so on, without having any AI background, can actually develop a product that solves a particular use case using a very powerful AI behind the scene. So that could be one very interesting opportunity ahead. And I think governments will also adopt this at a massive scale. I have learned recently that Asian governments are actually far more ahead in this. There is one experiment starting in India, for example, where entire education that for kids who are in underprivileged community would be able to access that through WhatsApp. And the use case is very interesting. A small child in Assam, let's say Eastern India, speaking in Assamese language to this system transliterating that into English, getting the answer, bringing back to Assamese language and Assamese voice back to that child. So that's the power that we're going to see. And they are planning to bring this to the entire countries government education system. So now that kind of project probably will create more job opportunities than ever before. Yes, there is a risk. I totally agree with you. But the risk is more in disinformation than in actual job itself, I feel.
Please let's give a round of applause to the panel.